National Heritage Week 2022 at Kylemore Abbey. Today we're just going to talk a little bit about the table settings here in our dining room in Kylemore. Our dining room is one of our visitors' favourite rooms in the house, and it would historically have been a very important room as well for the Henrys. This is where they wined and dined their guests. We imagine many very interesting conversations took place around this table, but we're just going to look a little more closely at the actual table settings itself. Now we have a slightly reduced table setting here, mostly because our furnishings here are completely open to the public, so we don't have as much cutlery that you would have on a full setting. As we're used to today, the cutlery would start from the right hand side and work the way in, and on the left hand side, and you work your way in through the courses. The glasses we see here is a typical Victorian setting. You would have your water glass first, your red wine glass, your white wine glass, champagne, very important for the toasts, and then a little cordial glass here. And right in front of the setting here as well is a cordial bottle. This is a beautiful hand-blown Victorian cordial bottle. These ones have, now it's not a Henry crest, but this is a family crest, and the Henrys would have had their own glassware and tableware here, all with the family crest on it. We do have a couple of pieces, but they're kept safely inside museum cases. And the glasses then, as you can see, they're really small, a lot smaller than what we would have today. But then again, they had a butler to keep their glasses topped up at all time. The stems here are known as barley twist stems, very typical of the time. So the table setting also has a finger bowl to the right for, of course, keeping your fingers clean throughout the meal. And then this little dish here that visitors often ask us about, this is a glass rinser. So the glass rinser was used. It could have ice cubes and cold water in it to rinse a glass for white wine, or it could have warm water to rinse a glass for red wine. Then on the side dish here, we have a little pickle dish. Now traditionally the pickle dishes would have been placed in all over the table really, and the Victorians loved to pickle and preserve foods in lots of different ways, especially before refrigeration came along. And we kind of imagine that the Victorians ate a much narrower palette of foods than we do, but actually the opposite is true. The range of fruit and vegetables that they ate was much wider, so a lot of them would be preserved and used as tasty little pickles and tidbits on the table. So also here we have the pickle fork lying across the plate, and that's just to reflect how traditionally the Victorians would lie the butter knife across the plate in that direction. And the main plate then here would have been the serving plate, and the serving plate would have stayed on the table throughout the meal, and then you can imagine the soup dish, the main course dish, and all the dishes would be placed on this, and this would only be taken away at the end of the meal. And then a little addition to our table, which is unique to Kylemore, are the violets. And the reason we have a posy of violets at every place is just to reflect the tradition at Kylemore of wearing a posy of violets to dinner. So violets were grown especially over in the glass houses, and the servants would bring a tray of violets around to the guests to put onto their buttonhole before they came down to dinner. And it also reminds us that the youngest member of the Henry family was Violet Henry, and violets were extremely fashionable as well at the time, and they reflected friendship and fidelity. Now another thing that we have, a nice interesting piece on the table here that I'll just show you before we finish up, is this little rest for the carving knife. And the rest for the carving knife would always be at the gentleman's end of the table, because it was kind of a ceremonial thing that was done when Mitchell Henry would, or whoever the man of the house was at the time, would carve the roast at the beginning of the meal. So that's a lovely little silver knife rest there. So that's just a little bit about our dining table at Kylemore.